Hi guys, today here. Welcome to my channel where I review African literature from African authors in Africa and out of Africa. So for my video today, I am going to be reviewing and talking about the book Sankofa, and this book is by Chibundu Onuzo, who is a Nigerian author, and she has actually written a couple of very good novels, and that includes The Spider King's Daughter and Welcome to Lagos, and those are books I'm actually looking forward to reading because this was actually a gift, and because I'm on a book ban, of course, so this was actually a gift, and I really enjoyed reading this. Soon after I finished The Girl with the Loud Voice, I got right into this book and I really enjoyed it. It did not take me long. Again, this is how you know I'm actually enjoying this reading thing at the moment. And yeah, I'll be talking to you about this book, and just to give you guys a synopsis of the book, the book is actually a funny, gripping and surprising story of a mixed race British woman who goes in search of her African father she never knew. So I'm going to be touching on a couple of topics, themes that are brought out of the book due to this synopsis, and I hope you guys are going to enjoy it. So let's get into the video. So as usual, I am going to be reading the themes from here, and to start with, the book is called Sankofa. So Sankofa is actually an akin Twi and Fante word, which means retrieve. I hope I'm not butchering how you pronounce that. The Zimbabwean in me just want to say Twi, but it's actually pronounced as Twi. And I hope, I'm so sorry if I'm butchering this, and Fanti, which Ghanaian dialects, and it actually means to retrieve. So there's a part where the father, I'm going to talk about it obviously, the father, he kind of explains something which is quite outstanding about why they call it the Sankofa. So it's like a bird, right? So its legs are facing forward, but its head is facing at the back. So in a way, it was kind of like a metaphor to say that if, as much as you're moving forward, you can never forget the past, which is what is happening here with the main character, whose name is Anna. So Anna, she's a mixed race woman. So here we can actually say mixed race, because I know like there are other terms which are politically incorrect. Like for example, if you go back home in Zimbabwe or certain African countries, they're called coloreds. But here, if you're colored, you're black. So here, I'm black, I'm not colored, but someone who is mixed race, if they're back home, they're colored. It's a bit confusing. And some of, you can't use half caste. So I'm just going to stick to mixed race so that you guys know exactly I'm talking about, you know, to be politically correct, because I don't want to offend anyone. So, as I was saying, the whole Sankofa meaning behind this comes through the journey Anna takes. So Anna, she's a mixed race woman. Her father, his name is Kofi or Francis. He actually impregnates her mom when they were young, and then he goes back to his country. He's called Bamana, and then when he goes to Banama, he never comes back. So Anna never met her dad, and her mom never talked about him. But when she was dead, so the book starts when the mother is dead, and then we end up finding out that she actually had his diaries. And because she never talked about her father, Anna, she did not really have that closure of knowing or understanding why exactly her mom didn't talk about the dad. So she finds his diaries, and then she's reading through them, she kind of like has this kinship. She's what do I say? She actually feels close to the man Francis Agray. I really hope I'm saying this correctly. I'm terrible when it comes to pronouncing names, I'm so sorry. But his name is Francis Agray. So she kind of like bonds with him as he's going through his journey, and then she also realizes that they also face the same things. So obviously Anna, growing up in England, and her mother, I think she was Welsh, because she had a Welsh name. Yes, she had a Welsh name. I'll look it up in a few minutes. I'll tell you guys. So there was kind of like a sense of loss because she was black. Because if you're a mixed race person, you're classified as black. So she couldn't really relate with that. And her mom, she never really understood her. As much as she was trying, she could not relate. So while she was reading the diary, she kind of, got to understand that Francis, her dad, was also going through the whole thing of racism, not being seen as other, but because Francis was actually a black man, the experience were not very similar, but you could actually pick certain things which she could relate to. Like, for example, wherever she went, people would want to like touch her hair, ask her, you know, if she could like, if the color would come off. And her mom was also struggling with catering to her hair, and she always felt out of place, she always felt different, which is also something that Francis, her dad, suffered from when he was in England. I think it was around the 60s when he was in England before he left, and you could see in his diaries, you know, he was very hurt by how he was being treated. And also something which came up was like how black men, they're only wanted for their bodies and, you know, like sexual partners, you know, the kind of questions that people ask. And that was actually quite intriguing, because I remember a few months or days or weeks ago, I had a conversation with a friend, and he was telling me that, you know, white women, not all of them, but most black men, they've actually noticed or experienced a certain number of white women who actually are more interested in having sexual relations with them rather than actually establishing a real relationship, because of, you know, the stereotypes of how black men are. That's all I can say. Okay, kids, watch this. Anyway, so that was something that Anna also struggled with, relating as to whether she's black or white and how exactly she feels. Although for Francis, her dad, it was more clear that he was black, but at the same time, they faced the same thing. So that was something that was actually quite outstanding in this whole journey of self-discovery, because whilst this all is happening, Anna is also going through a divorce. So she's like going through two self-discovery journeys at the same time, which can be quite exhausting. I could feel it for her, because, you know, she was a full character. That's something that I also liked about her. She was a full character. She had good days, she had bad days, but you could engage, you could liaise with her. That's something that I really enjoyed. Like, you know, she was a full person. She was biased in her own way. Like, when she went to Panama, I would also touch on that. When she went to Panama, she was, you know, she had her own biases of what black people, what Africa is supposed to look like, which is something that most people face, in quotes, face here. And it was quite interesting seeing it from a mixed race person's point of view, because obviously as much as they're treated as black person like I am, they don't get the full black experience, if I should say in those terms. So that was something that was quite interesting, that, you know, the whole thing behind the Sankofa was actually, you know, as much as you move forward, you have to look back. So both of them, they were actually going through this journey, the father and the daughter, and that's the next topic I'm going to talk about. So as I touched a bit before on the whole thing of identity crisis, so Francis, like I mentioned before, he was going through all those emotions, and then when he went back to Panama, because I think something happened to his mom, she got sick, so he had to go back to his family, to his mom, but he never came back. And that was something that really stuck with Anna, and why didn't he come back? Did he not love her? And funny thing, he did not know that the mother was pregnant, so all along he did not even know that he had a daughter. But regardless of that, or slash irregardless is a word, by the way, so super happy, because the Zimbabweans were abusing that word. So irregardless is now a word. I can use it happily without worrying whether it means something or not. Anyway, regardless of that, he could have come back, but then his excuse was like, oh, you know, when I got here, that's when he started being like more political, because he ends up being a president in Bamana, and he ends up being a president there. So like, it was just a lot going on, you know. He ended up being a president. He was very political. Even when he was back in England, through this whole thing of self-discovering himself, his journey, he got into like political things. And I was also happy to see like there were Zimbabwean characters there. There was Thomas and Blessing. There was a Zimbabwean couple who went through their own thing, and, you know, there was also mentioning of Rhodesia, what was going on in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, Southern Rhodesia. Oh no, Zimbabwe was Rhodesia, and what was going on in Rhodesia. So it was also, you know, it actually piqued my interest, because I was like, oh, okay, so someone else is talking about what was going on in Zimbabwe back then. And it was quite interesting, because she also touched on like how black people in England, even when they came for school, it was very hard for them. and it kind of reminded me of Dambudzo Marechera. So Dambudzo Marechera is a Zimbabwean writer who was in the UK, in Oxford, and he went to Oxford University, but he had this identity crisis thing, which is something I also picked from Francis, who was going through that. And it was quite interesting because now that I knew that I had an idea of what exactly was going through, it was quite easy for me to understand the whole process of why he gave up certain things, and he ended up like, you know, being misunderstood even when he was here. And he kind of like, he had a double life. So, you know, other people were describing him as being very quiet, very poised, and then other people had a different, you know, experience with him. So that was quite interesting, the whole thing of self-discovery, because when he went back to Bamana, he became Coffee. It was not Francis anymore. So it was like there were two different people, and it was actually harder for Anna because she had already related with Francis, and it was hard now for her to relate with Coffee, who was the former president, who had done some atrocious things. He had killed people, you know. He was a typical African dictator. That's the best I can explain it. So it was quite hard for her to find out all these things about her father, the man that she wanted to meet, and then also having this image of Francis, who was a very sweet, poised man. And it also merged with her own identity, because now she was going through this divorce, and now she also had to find herself for herself. So she was, as much as she was still the Anna who had a daughter, who had a husband who cheated on her, she also had the young Anna who, you know, who struggled so much with knowing who she was, going through all these emotions. You know, even her husband, he was saying that he liked her better with like straightened hair. So when she started letting her hair out, being in its curly form, he was like, yeah, it's nice, but she could tell that he was a bit withdrawn. And these are like kind of, obviously I'm not mixed race, but I've read and heard so many people say like this kind of things, you know, they kind of happen in interracial relationships where, you know, there are certain things that you can see that, let's say I'm black, let's say if I'm dating someone who's white, not all of them, I'm just putting it out there, but based on this book, they were like tiny microaggressions. She could tell them even with the family, they were very united. I think she even used the word inbred. I think she did. So, you know, they were like very close and quite close-minded. So you can kind of understand that, you know, it's like she also always had to explain herself why this is like this, why this is like that. These are some of the things that I picked, and also like with prior knowledge of what I've heard people who are mixed race going through. And that was pretty much the whole thing which happened with the whole identity thing, because she really struggled with it. And I also like that she mentioned Bessie Head. So like a few months ago when I was doing the whole ABC thing, I'm still going to do that, Bessie had also struggled with her identity, being a mixed race person. She didn't know if she was black or white. She couldn't really relate, and this was something that Anna was also going through. So she kind of there's a book that she was reading in the book about Bessie Head, and yeah, it really made sense to me. Another topic which stood out for me was cultural differences. So this is seen more when Anna actually ends up going to Panama by herself. I'm trying not to like ruin the whole book, so I'm just giving you themes and topics which I picked out so that it might pique your interest. But the whole essence of the story is about self-discovery and how Anna goes to Panama by herself for the first time. So she's actually quite new to this. Even her daughter and her husband, her ex-husband, they're actually shocked that she's actually brave enough to do this. So you can see she was someone who was laid back, who was kind of like, how do I say this? She kind of had like a routine, so to say. So like if you knew she wasn't there, she was there, that kind of thing. So this was something which was out of character. I think one of the characters, is either her husband or her daughter, kind of hinted that, you know, this is kind of out of character, but it was her journey. She was doing it the way that she wanted it. So with cultural differences, this comes out when she meets her other siblings from her dad. So obviously Francis, former president, he's had children before, or he's had children now, so she's like the oldest child. So she has younger siblings, and I remember one of the siblings was actually surprised that she called their dad Coffee by his name, because they all called him Papa, and even the way that she spoke to him, it was not from a place of fear, because in African culture you can never call your parent by their name. That is like taboo, you know. Some people don't even know their parents' names, you know, because it's like it's a form of respect. Even when you see older people, you call them by their child's names or by their last name, marital name, that is. So they were so surprised that, oh, you actually call our dad by a name. And if I'm being honest, when I moved here, this was like a culture shock for me. Hearing someone who's 83 saying, oh, hi, you can call me Robert, I was like, Mr. Robert, Sir Robert, something like that, you know. It was very hard for me to get to that place. Even like now, when people are talking about my mom, they're like, oh, how's Wendy? I'm like, who's that, you know? And even for me to actually, when I'm talking to someone and then I'm like, oh, Wendy said this, and I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm kind of getting used to it, but not, I wouldn't call my mom by a name, obviously. Oh. But that was actually like a culture shock, and even the siblings, I could tell, they were like, oh, so you talk to him, even like talking back. Most African children do not have the liberty to actually talk back, and it's not even back talk. Even when you're trying to explain something, you're not really safe to do that, because you know there could be different outcomes with that. But with Anna, she was brave. I wouldn't say even brave, she was just vocal, you know. If I say brave, I think that's reaching, because she was just speaking her mind. But that's how you know, like, the cultural differences in African households, not all of them, most African households, a child can never really stand up to their parents and say exactly what they think or how they feel, you know, because apparently the parent is always right, but that's not always the case. Okay, just because you're grown up doesn't mean you're always right. I'm learning this with my cousin too. But anyway, so the cultural differences, that's one which really, you know, stood out for me. And also like how people kind of treated her differently when she went to Bamana. So like there she was called Obroni. Obroni is like a white person, so like she could feel I wouldn't say, I don't know if this is under culture. It's not really culture per se, but it's more of like stereotyping or something social somewhere there, you know. So when she went to Bamana, she was like now superior, if I should say, because now she was like she was light skinned, you know. So it's like colorism, right? When she went there, she experienced colorism, so she was treated better than other people. And it actually got to the point where they were actually, people were just touching her just to, you know, I don't know, like, you know, just to kind of like have a feel of what exactly she felt like. Even like the treatment that she was getting, she was, you know, being treated better than other people. I remember when she ends up being in a like detained or in prison, she had her own cell, you know, and other people, they were like in stacked in one cell and that kind of thing. She got water. Other people, they did not even get water. They were getting like one meal and then water after like every 3 days. So there was also that you can see that there was, you know, a bit of I think I would say colorism, because that's what it is. I wouldn't want to say like cultural differences. I don't think like that's cultural, no. So I think like her actually benefiting from the color of her skin, that also stood out for me, that, you know, there is colorism in Africa. As much as people try to deny it, you know, black girl magic, that's like an aesthetic, because not everyone adheres to that. You know, black girls are only liked on screen, but when it's actually out there, it's a different story, because, you know, people will be people, you know. It's on the internet, oh, black girl magic, you know, I like dark skinned girls, but then when it comes to reality, it's a different story. So we're used to that. But actually, no, we're not used to that. It's something you should never be able to get used to. So no, I'm not used to that. It still hurts my feelings, coming from a family where colorism really spoke volumes, because my sister, she's like super light. She's like, she almost looks like she's mixed race. To other people, she actually does. But then there's me, and then there's my brother. So I went through that period of colorism where people were like, okay, she looks better than you because of the color of your skin. Even up to now, I still have cousins who like say that. And I actually kind of saw that in this book when it came to Anna, because she was benefiting from that, and I was like, okay, that that happens, you know, the kind of thing. And something else that came up on cultural differences, obviously, with the colorism thing, and then also racism, because colorism and racism, they're cousins to each other, if we're being honest. Because treating someone different because they're white, and also treating someone different because they have a lighter skin tone, cousins to me, that is. So there was colorism and also racism, as we touched before. Coffee, he faced the brutal side of racism when he was in England, how he was seen, wanted for like his physique, his for sexual needs, and also like how he was never able to attain and also be fully himself, because he always had to be meek. If someone was to say something mean to him, he kind of had to say good day. Not these days anymore. Like, we're vocal, okay? We're vocal. I'm just putting it out there because I know people will be like, oh, that was during that time. I've heard people say, you know, my aunt or my grandmother or my grandfather, you know, it was during their time. And I kindly propose, how about you bring them up to date to these times, okay? How about that, you know? Because I think that's the kindest thing you can do. Help them to be a better version of themselves. It's never too late to be a better person, even when you're 90, you know? This whole thing of saying you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I think you can. You really can. But anyway, that's just my opinion, you know? It's not a fact, it's my opinion. But yeah, that's what happened when it came to the whole thing of cultural differences, and that's what I picked up from there. So yeah. Actually, no, there's actually something else. Sorry, I forgot. There was actually this thing with the ritual. So I was actually surprised that Anna was actually quite poised and okay with this whole ritual thing. Maybe that's just me being stereotypical, but she ended up going through this ritual where I think in Bamana or in West Africa they have this culture where they initiate a girl into becoming a woman. So it's like a ritual where they go by the river and that kind of thing. And I was actually shocked that she was quite open. Of course, it ended up being more than what she was expecting, but I was actually quite shocked that she was actually accepting of that. And when she went through the ritual, she could see her dead mother, and she could, you know, see her ancestors, the white and the black. So for her, it was kind of like a wholesome experience, because it ended up making sense that, you know, they were both her family, the black side and the white side, and it was kind of like a full circle moment. And I think that was very nice. And her name ended up, her West African name or her Twi name ended up being Nana, which means queen, which is like an anagram for Anna. So I think that was very creative and very nice. So that's what I picked when it came to cultural differences. Yeah. There was also a focus on filial relationships. So filial relationships are more to do with a son or a daughter kind of relationship with parents. And there was Anna and Rose. So Anna, her name was Rose. She had a daughter called Rose with a husband. And I wouldn't say it was a difficult relationship, but I think just like her mom failed to understand her, Anna also failed to understand Rose. Because I think Rose had anorexia, so she was struggling with eating, and every time that she saw her, she was thinner and she struggled with eating, so she related more with the dad. And I'm not sure if also the issue of race kind of came in, because now Anna is mixed race and Rose is white. So I think visually mixed race Anna is, and Rose is white. So I'm not sure if really that also played part in also how, you know, her mom, Anna's mom, could not fully understand Anna. So if that was also happening with Anna and Rose, obviously it wasn't more to do with race, but it was just a matter of, you know, not really understanding what she was going through. So Rose struggled with eating, but she loved her daughter, and her daughter also loved her back. But she always got agitated or angry whenever they would mention about her weight, because that was something that was worrisome to them. But I completely understand, because if a parent is kind of like picking at whatever you're doing, as much as for them, for Anna, it was coming from a place of love, because she wanted to understand what her daughter was going through, if she could help. But for Rose, it translated to something completely different, which I went through as a teenager, and I still will go through now as an adult with my mom and my dad. You know, it's like a circle of life. So there was also that, and there was also Anna and the mom, they kind of had like a difficult relationship, mostly because the mom never talked about the dad. Like every time she would talk about that, she kind of like cut her off. And I think the mom was hurt because she loved Francis, aka Coffee. And you could actually see it in the diaries that when Francis was writing, and also her mom, like how her mom was also into him, because how they met really was through her older sister, her mom's older sister, and that didn't work out, so they ended up dating. But he was a tenant at the house, so he lived upstairs, and Anna and her dad and her sister, Anna's mom, I need to find out her name. I don't want to butcher the name, but oh my gosh, I think I should have thought about this. I really had the name at the tip of my tongue, but now I'm forgetting it. Because his sister was Carly. Oh, Elizabeth. Bronwyn Elizabeth Bain. So that's the name. So we'll go with Elizabeth or Bronwyn. Let's go with Bronwyn because I think, we need to honor the first name. So Bronwyn was Anna's mom. And so Bronwyn and his sister Carly, they used to live with their dad. And then Francis ended up being a tenant and he stayed upstairs. So she was 17, Bronwyn was 17, and Coffee was 25 when they started this whole thing. So you kind of get how they got to each other, how they got with each other. And I also liked how, how they got with each other is actually like, you'll be reading it in a diary, how they ended up like conceiving Anna. And I liked how she picked on when she was saying that's pedophilia, like how the dad approached her mom when she was 17. And I actually thought that was quite interesting because it was, but it also kind of like had this feel of stereotyping black men. It for me, it was a bit of a mixed emotion because obviously I don't want to be biased, okay, first of all, let's start there. But at the same time, it kind of gave that feeling, of him kind of like, he wasn't praying, I don't know, but you read it and then we discuss it and then you tell me from your point of view how exactly you felt about it. Because for me, at first, it really felt like Anna was angry at her dad, which is actually, which I can understand because she had not known this man for a long time, and then she was speaking all these things, and I kind of felt for her because all this time she had not had a dad, and then she's finding out about him in the diary. And I think she also had those biases, so those biases were actually driving that too. But also there was pedophilia because she was like 17, he was 25, and then he came back to her and then was like, oh, I'm sorry, I should not have done that. But then the mom was like, oh, it's okay, I actually wanted you to do that. So I don't know, even when you're 17, can you like give consent like that? I don't know. Like now it's quite hard. I would want to hear your opinion or what you guys think, because I'm always open to learning and unlearning certain things, of course. But that's also the beauty of African literature. It makes you think, it makes you question so many things. So definitely I thought it was pedophilia because she's like 17, and also her actually saying, it's okay, I wanted you to do that. I'm like, I don't know. Of course, she gave consent, but most people, especially like men who prey on women, they'll be like, but she said she wanted it. But he's young, so you can kind of see where I'm kind of like struggling with that. But yeah, so Anna already, you can actually see she already had her own biases when it came to that. But with her mom, Anna and the mom, they didn't really have a great loving, hugging, kissing kind of relationship, because Anna was struggling with being mixed race and her mom was white. She was trying to relate, she was trying the best that she could, she loved her daughter, but Anna did not think it was enough. So that's how the relationship was. Even at the end, she gave her after her mom had died, she actually saw that her mom, she did the best that she could. She managed to buy a house, even though she was just like she was working in a shop, a clothes shop, I think. Yeah, a clothes shop. And she managed to buy a house. She mortgaged the house. She paid everything, and then she left it to Anna. So she saw that her mom was trying the best that she could. Also dealing with the heartbreak because she loved Coffee, but Coffee never came back. He never wrote back. He never did anything, and she ended up raising the child by herself. Another bond which was there was Coffee and his kids. So Coffee's kids, they feared him. which is typical for African. Not all of them, most. Also, in my experience, I used to fear my dad. They were afraid of him. They were like grown ups in their 30s and like 30s, 40s, somewhere there, but they were still afraid of their dad. And you could see that Kofi, the way that he ran his household was the same way he ran the country. So he kind of had that, like, you know, how do I say it? Like a detector. Yeah, he kind of had that. He possessed that. But you could also see where he was coming from, why he was doing that, you know. So you kind of have to have your own opinion on that. But the way that it reflected on his kids, you know, it wasn't in a very good light. Even like Afua, his daughter, she wanted his approval so much. She would do anything, the way that she spoke to him, the way that she went with him on his campaigns. She wanted his approval so much. The older son, though, he was over it. He was over it. And, you know, you could see like there was a bit of nepotism. I was also going to touch on nepotism, but I might as well do it now. There was a bit of nepotism because he never really worked per se. He was just given things, but they were also in his father's name. So he kind of like got to certain places because of that, which is typical. I think we've seen it with most African presidents' children or politicians. Nothing new there. The other issue of nepotism, also Kofi and his kids, the way that he treated Anna. So he didn't want Anna to go back to the UK, and this man, he ended up blocking her from coming out, from going back to England, and then he had her go to jail, to prison, and she was beaten up and she was detained only because he didn't want her to go. He literally staged that so that she could not go back. So you can imagine how, if he was running his household like that, how was he treating people in the country? But you have to read it, guys. You have to read it to fully understand the whole circle, because he had good things and he had bad things. I think like people were now struggling to say, you know, oh my gosh, he's a bad man, but he's also done this, which I think when it comes to African leaders is something that most struggle with, because you'd be looking at, oh, you know, but they did this, so they can't be this. I think we kind of have this black or white narrative. Sometimes there are gray areas, you know, and yeah, that's something that I also learned, you know, like just because someone has done something good doesn't mean they cannot be bad. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I picked on filial relationships, mother-daughter, and also Robert, Anna's husband. He was very close with his daughter, so she listened more to her dad, and I think that was also a bond that Anna wanted. She was something that she also, you know, craved for because she never really got to experience it. So that was pretty exciting. So in essence, really, that's pretty much what happens in the books. There's so many other topics I did not mention because I don't want to spoil it for you guys. It just came out. This book actually just came out. It didn't come out. It came out this year, and this was actually a gift, like I mentioned before. I'm super grateful for people who are gifting me books, because being on a book ban is not easy, because I'm always tempted to buy the latest book coming out, even though I still have books I need to read. So this book ban has really worked for me, because I'm cleansing. I'm like reading the material that I already had and easing into other books so that I can give you guys credible and honest opinions when it comes to these books. And there are also topics such as dictatorship. There's so many topics, and I found that to be very interesting, and I like this book. Highly recommend it for you guys. If you're someone who might be struggling, maybe yourself, you're mixed race, and you're struggling to, like, you kind of want to know about the whole thing of self-discovery, this is for you. And it's not a very hard book to read. You can tell with the font, it's quite large, so it's not like a very big book. I like that the font is quite big, so it's quite easier for people who wear glasses or those who don't. And it's in first person narrative, so it's Anna who's telling the story in a word, so you kind of like get to embody Anna. And yeah, that's pretty much it, you guys. From my side, obviously, like I said, there's so many things that I picked from this, but I can't say all of them, because if I end up doing that, I'll be ruining the book and it won't be very good for also the authors. You know, they need to have the full experience. And if you've read the book, or if you're going to read the book, I'm open to always discuss. You can hit me in my DMs on Twitter or on Instagram. We can discuss the book, or in the comment section. always open to that. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have an amazing day/week, and I'll see you again next week. Goodbye.